As Paul and his family arrived at Arakeen Palace, their new home, they were greeted by crowds of happy people.
They were mostly happy not to have been told to turn the page in their Dune storybook at the sound of the annoying ding.
See how they cheer for us and our soldiers, Father.
Paul said.
Not for us,
Explained Duke Leto.
Weird Al Yankovic is on the plane.
They cheer because the cruel Harkonnen rulers are gone. We must prove ourselves better rulers before they cheer for us.
Shatterproof rulers.
When Paul reached his bedroom, all he could think about was sleep after that long day. As he approached the bed, a poisoned Hunter-Seeker dart floated silently out of the headboard.
I think I saw something like that on Gordon Ramsay's Hotel Nightmares once.
Paul stopped in his tracks, knowing that the dart headed toward any movement and attacked. Paul said quietly,
If I move, I'm dead.
Does that include your lips? Because you could have just thought that.
I must not move until I can grab the Hunter-Seeker and destroy it.
Just then, the door opened, and Shadout Mapes, a Fremen housekeeper, entered.
I put that Do Not Disturb sign on the knob for a reason, Paul said. I could have been sleeping. I could have been sleeping.
The dart streaked past Paul toward her. Paul lunged at it, grabbed it, and smashed it against the wall next to the door. Shadout approached Paul and shakily whispered,
I was called about the clogged toilet.
I would be dead if not for you, my lord. I must repay the debt by telling you that there is a traitor in your house.
Save my life again and I'll tell you who it is.
The following morning, Paul and his father flew from the palace in an ornithopter to inspect the spice mining operations in the deep desert.
Will we see any sandworms?
Asked Paul.
Not convincing ones, his father replied. This is the David Lynch version, remember?
Of course.
The ornithopter pilot answered.
The worms defend the spice, and they do not give it up willingly.
Look!
Shouted Paul, pointing.
See how the sand ripples!
A worm is coming. I'll radio for a carryall to come and lift the harvester and his workers to safety.
Luckily, I'm with the RAC. Let me just get on the app.
But as long moments passed, the sandworm grew nearer. The rescue craft failed to arrive.
The Baron must have sabotaged my transmission,
Shouted the Duke.
It's pronounced sabotage, shouted Shatner.
We must rescue the workers ourselves.
The ornithopter dropped close to the sand, and the workers ran from the harvester and jumped on board just as the sandworm surfaced.
I'm amazed they could run at all. I've had breakfast at the harvester and it is very filling.
It opened its gigantic mouth and, with its huge teeth glistening, swallowed the entire harvester. Later, safely back at the palace, the Duke walked through the corridors, checking security and talking to his men.
I don't remember the chime effect reverberating like that on side 1, do you? He asked each and every one of them.
In one darkened hallway, he suddenly came upon the moaning, half-conscious form of a Fremen servant on the floor. It was Shadout Mapes. She had been stabbed.
And not in a good way.
Duke Leto kneeled beside her and asked,
Is it kneeled or knelt? A narrator friend of mine wants to know.
Who did this?
But before she could answer, she died.
The Duke ordered that she be put on a gurney. No one was more surprised than Gurney himself.
At that moment, the Duke heard the engines of the palace's shield generator slow down, then stop.
The generator. The force field that protects the palace has been sabotaged.
He cried out.
How many more times is sabotaged? William Shatner cried out in return.
As he brought his arm up to activate his own body shield, a drugged dart struck him, sending him sprawling to the floor, paralyzed.
Best episode of Bullseye ever. Here's what you could have won.
Leaning against the wall, unable to move, the Duke saw Dr. Yue standing over him.
So, you're the traitor.
He gasped.
You, my friend, my physician. Why?
You've just been too damn healthy. I needed something to do, the doctor explained.
Because Baron Harkonnen forced me to.
Dr. Yue answered.
My wife is his prisoner, so I am forced to do his bidding.
Otherwise, he says he'll return her. I thank you.
But we can both revenge ourselves, my lord, and at least save your wife and son.
How?
Dr. Yue held out a poisoned tooth.
With this, put it in your mouth.
Is this covered by my insurance? Seems kind of sketchy.
And when the Baron leans close to you to enjoy his triumph, bite down on the tooth. A poison gas will be released, killing you both.
Call me later and let me know how it went.
The Duke nodded and Dr. Yue placed the tooth in his mouth. Yue then took the family ring from the Duke's finger.
Antiques Roadshow, here I come.
For the new Duke.
He said,
For your son, Paul.
By now, the Harkonnen ships were on the ground, and the soldiers were inside the palace.
January 6th, in space.
Soon, the palace was in flames. The Duke lay dying and could not prevent Baron Harkonnen from taking Paul and Lady Jessica captive.
Take them into the desert.
Hissed one of the Baron's evil assistants.
The sandworms will make sure their bodies are never found.
We pay them off to hide corpses. Remember Jimmy Hoffa? That was one of theirs.
The ornithopter carrying the prisoners streaked over the vast wasteland of the Dune Desert. Lady Jessica had been gagged, so she would not be able to use a Bene Gesserit skill.
With the benefit of hindsight, we probably should have mentioned her possessing that skill on side 1, but time is a factor.
The voice to order either of the guards to release them. But Lady Jessica had been teaching Paul her skill, and he decided the time had come for him to try it.
Release my mother's gag!
The voice's strength filled the spacecraft. The guard untied the gag,
It's the best gag in this recording so far.
then attacked and killed the ornithopter pilot.
Untie my son!
Lady Jessica ordered. The guard did as he was told.
I mean, honestly, who could deny Francesca Annis anything?
Paul immediately overpowered him, then attempted to gain control of the thopter. Despite his efforts, the ornithopter crash-landed in the deep desert of Dune.
Despite his efforts or because of them? Just flashing back to my first driving lesson. Thoughts with the instructor's family.
Before leaving the ship, Paul pulled the survival box out from under a seat. When he discovered Dr. Yue's belongings inside, he understood.
His collection of poisoned teeth is one short.
So, Dr. Yue is the traitor. He shall pay for it.
I'll invoice him in the morning.
Then Paul found his father's ring and suspected the worst.
We must get out of here.
Tears filled Lady Jessica's eyes, for she knew that her husband was dead,
So much for those powers of hers, he's actually still alive at this stage.
that he would never see the unborn child she was carrying. Back in the palace, the glow of the flames flickered across the Baron's evil face as he leaned over the body of the dying Duke.
See?
So, my arch enemy now lies helpless at my feet. You shall die soon, Duke Leto Atreides.
At which point, your wife's earlier presentiment of your death will have been proven correct. You can thank me later, once you're dead.
The Baron looked over at the shame-ridden face of Dr. Yue.
And you traitor, you shall join your wife
In Huddersfield.
in death.
Which is the next best thing to Huddersfield.
The shame on Yue's face turned to shock as he felt a knife being driven deep between his shoulder blades by the Baron's evil assistant.
Why couldn't I have been stabbed by one of your nice assistants? I suppose the question answers itself, really.
Turning back to Leto and leaning close, the Baron snarled.
I want your ducal signet ring so I can rule your people. Where is it?
Come closer, and I will tell you.
Gasped the Duke.
You're going to need rubber gloves and no gag reflex.
I can't make out what he is mumbling.
Complained the Baron to his assistant.
Why do I even listen to Tom Waits?
See if you can.
As the assistant leaned over, the Duke bit down on the poisoned tooth, killing them both instantly. The Duke's revenge has missed its mark.
And I, the narrator, have switched from past tense to present tense for no obvious reason.
This time. The moment that Duke Leto Atreides took his last breath, his wife and son were preparing to run for their lives across the desert. They knew that the sounds of their footsteps would bring the dreaded sandworms.
It's like they've never even heard that Fatboy Slim record.
As his mother wept, Paul took his father's ring and slipped it on his finger. With tears streaming down his cheeks, he cried,
Father! Father! I am Duke now.
I'm the man now, dog.
Am I ready for it? Am I ready for it? Am I ready?
but there was no answer.
because he was finally dead, despite the differing opinions of his wife and son.
Only the echo of his voice in the cold desert night. Paul and his mother had escaped with their lives from the clutches of the evil Baron Harkonnen. Would the vast desert lead them to safety? Or did the gigantic sandworms have another fate in store for them?
A night on the town, perhaps, a spot of dinner, some dancing, and afterwards, who knows? Well, that's the end of this riff of Dune Part 2. Thanks for joining me, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like access to over 100 more riffs, including classic Doctor Who, Jason of Star Command and the 1944 Captain America serial, subscribe on Patreon.